Hello guys, welcome to InfoChess. So in this video we'll be seeing the third opening principle known as Benoni Defense. So this Benoni Defense is the parent of the gambit known as Benko Gambit. So I hope you have in the last two opening principles, that is Alliance Defense and the Albin Counter Gambit, you have clearly thoroughly understood it, and if you have any doubts or queries, please do write in the comment section so that I can go through it and respond to it very quickly. So I hope everyone are ready with your pencil or a pen and a notebook to understand this defense and clearly take advantage of the enemy's position. So let's start the video guys. The defense starts with d4, knight to f6, c4, c5 and d5, and this setup is known as Benoni Defense because here white simply ignores the pawn at c5 square and simply promotes his pawn to a d5 rank, so that in order to keep the centralized pressure and also the centralized space for him. So the mainline variation continues with e6, knight to c3, e into d5, c into d5 and d6, making the pawn not to move to 6th rank. And now simply plays e4 in order to put more and more pressure on the black side by capturing the center space. Black simply ignores it and plays g6 in a thought of putting the bishop on g7 square, which is a fianchetto, so that he can take care of the longest dagger, which may be useful in sometimes in some future. So now white simply ignores it and play f4 in order to put more and more pressure on the center space. He plays bishop to g7 and now bishop to b5 plus check. Now in this position there are three options for black to defend this check. He can either move his king to f8, or can keep his bishop to d7, or his knight to d7, or this knight to d7. So if he puts his bishop on d7, this will bring a very bad position for white and will give you a +5 advantage for the black king, for the white to play and win the match. So that is, if he then after bishop to d7 he simply plays e5. Now d into e5, f into e5, attacking this knight. Now knight has two options. He can either play his knight to g8 or can either play his knight to h5. So as everyone know it, he cannot bring this knight back to the same position, so he will again undevelop his piece. So that is why he plays his knight to h5. And now white should not capture the bishop, or instead play knight to f3 in order to not to bring his queen to h4 and threaten a check. So that is why he places knight to f3. Now if black captured the bishop and now knight captures as known, now queen to a5 plus check, threatening this check and also threatening to capture the knight. Now white has simply only one move. He plays knight to c3, and now there are many options for black. So there are, he can either castle, can develop his piece, or can develop his pawn, but you should clearly think on this position. You should only keep this knight safer. So for example, if he plays any move like developing move like knight to d7, now he's simply gone because g4 traps the knight at h5 square. He does not have any square. If he goes to f6, then pawn captures. If he goes to f5, f4, bishop captures. So that is why if he then after g4 he simply grabs the pawn at f5 square. Now g into h5, knight into f3, queen into f3, and now if black captures the pawn at h5 square, you should not capture the pawn again at h5 because it will reduce the chances of winning, because after queen captures the h5, bishop into c3 plus check, pawn into c3, now queen into c3 and bishop to d2 loses the rook. So that is why you should not capture the pawn at h5 square, or instead play some developing move like bishop to d2, or you can also play his queen to e4, threatening the check. He has no half. Then after playing his queen to d4, black simply loses his castling. So that is why this position is not better for black. So here, instead of putting this bishop at d7 square, is either keep his knight or keep with this knight. So better is to keep this knight, because as if we also keep this knight, then also the same position develops. So that is why after the bishop b4 plus check, knight f d7 is the preferred move, and the next preferred move is to move king to f8 square, but eventually this destroys the castling. So that is why black players usually respond it by playing knight f to d7. So this was the first mainline variation. So the next other variation starts with same d4, knight to f6, c4, c5, d5. Now as we saw in the mainline variation of black responding it with e6, now he plays e5. Now black can either end pass into, but he doesn't do it. He plays knight to c3, now d6, e4, bishop to e7, knight to f3, castling, and now usually other players responded by playing bishop to d3, but even there are players who play like h3, making this bishop unable to making this bishop not to come by g4 square and pin it. So that is why they play h3. This is the most preferred as by the engine. So now black plays knight to a6 in hope to bring this knight to b4 square and control this square, and so many squares available for him. So that is why he plays a3, making his knight not to develop to b4 square. And now the game continues. There are so many options for black. So he can play his bishop to d7, can either play his pawn to b6, then either develop his queen, for example, to d7, so that he can bring this pawn to b5 square. And now if the pawn captures, there will be surely some trick going on. So that is why, but as far as the engine is concerned, this position gives more advantage to white than the black, because as you can see, his pieces are much more developed. It's much more active. You can see the same position at the center, but you can see his bishop has this d3 square. This bishop has this g4, g5, e3. So we can also place pawn to b3 and then develop his bishop to b2. So that is why, since his pieces are very much active than the black's pieces, engine gives a slighter advantage on this position to white. So this was the other variation of the Benoni defense, and I hope you have understood both the mainline variation and the other variation of the Benoni defense. So if you have any doubts or queries, please ask in the comment section so that I can clear it and we will have a better understanding of this defense. So in the next video, we will be seeing the child of this defense known as Benoni gambit, which is slightly similar to this position, but instead of playing e6, he plays b5. So I have given the basic idea of this opening on the next video itself. In this video itself. So I hope we'll come back to the next video very much positively and very much confidently. So till then, have a great learning and stay tuned, and please subscribe the video, share the video, like the video, so that it gives me a huge motivation to make the videos more and more easier and more and more advantageous to other people, or also mainly the beginners who want to achieve their rating and succeed in chess career. Till then, have a great learning. All the very best.